Kurt Knispel was a Sudeten German Heer panzer loader, gunner and later commander. He was the highest-scoring tank ace of World War II, with 168 verified tank kills. He first demonstrated his ability as a gunner during training at Putlos. He possessed total three-dimensional vision, as well as extraordinary reflexes. But, much to Knispel's dismay, he remained a loader. In August 1941, Knispel first saw combat in a short-barreled Panzer IV tank, during Operation Barbarossa. He soon rose to the rank of gunner, under Lieutenant Hellman's command. In the words of his commander, Knispel repeatedly distinguished himself as a tough yet smart gunner, who often spotted the target sooner than all the others, in spite of a constricted field of vision. Knispel proved to be significantly superior to his opponents in the 3 tank versus tank battles he participated in as gunner at the time. Even before they had spotted the German tanks, the enemy tanks were targeted by Knispel and knocked out with 1 or 2 shots. The next 2 engagements were very similar. Kurt Knispel proved himself to be an unrivaled and unerring gunner in them. Obergefreiter Alfred Rubbel returned to the unit on 11 January 1942, having recovered from his injury, and took command of a Panzer IV, armed with the new 75mm long-barreled gun. Kurt Knispel was assigned as the tank's gunner, and Rubbel heard that Knispel had already destroyed 7 enemy tanks and several anti-tank weapons, as well as repelling numerous infantry assaults. In Alfred Rubbel's words, Knispel's vigilance never relaxed. Whether by night or day, he commanded the entire battlefield within his field of vision. Even before I could give the order to fire, Knispel had already fired and destroyed the enemy tank, with 1 shot using one of the new hollow-charged shells. Time and again, he had recognized the situation immediately and reacted just as quickly. I never saw anyone else who combined this sureness of reaction with absolute accuracy. It was unique. By January 1943, Knispel had returned to Putlos to continue his training, and he was already credited with 12 tank victories at the time. He was surprised to find the Tiger tank, the new champion of tank warfare, waiting for him. He found that the new tank outperformed all of the rumors he had heard about it during training and range practice. It was critical to measure the range as precisely as possible in long-range engagements. Even with the nearly flat trajectory of the 88mm tank cannon, an error in range calculation guaranteed a miss. It was here that Kurt Knispel was in his element. Once again, according to Alfred Rubbel, here, my friend Kurt Knispel demonstrated that he not only had a terrific eye, but also an especially exceptional 3-dimensional vision. All of this enabled him to later emerge victorious from hundreds of engagements. In April 1943, the 503rd Heavy Panzer Battalion was a formidable tank force in the Kharkov area, fully equipped with 45 Tiger tanks, and other vehicles and equipment. One set of soldiers, led by Oberfeldwebel Hans Fendesack, and including Kurt Knispel, was to become the 503rd Heavy Panzer Battalion's first company. The company had 5 Tigers, and 5 experienced commanders were assigned to the 3 platoons of the first company, including Alfred Rubbel and Hannes Rippel. Kurt Knispel had been assigned as Hannes Rippel's gunner. This period in the Kharkov area was described by Franz Wilhelm Lochmann, a member of the company commander's crew. The company was provided with aerial photos of the Russian bunkers, which made it possible to designate targets with great accuracy. Each tank was assigned its targets, including between the assigned sectors of the infantry positions. Feldwebel Rippel's tank achieved the best results. No wonder, for behind the aiming mechanism of this tiger sat Kurt Knispel, and he played a solo of which the other gunners could only dream. No one could come close to Kurt, and we acknowledged that without envy. It was a special gift, which made him capable of these feats. The other crews generally agreed with this statement. Rippel's tiger was unbeatable with Knispel as gunner. Knispel and Rippel had known each other for a long time, and their skills complemented one another. Several days before the launch of Operation Citadel, the last German offensive in the east, the unit received a new commanding officer. Hauptmann Graf von Kageneck was the man in charge of the 503rd Battalion during its most successful period. What he had tried his best to avoid occurred right before Citadel. His battalion's 3 companies were assigned to different divisions. The expected concentrated force of a complete Tiger battalion was squandered. Assigned to the 7th Panzer Division, the 1st Company rolled forward early on the morning of 5th July. The bridge across the Donets River that had been erected by the engineers had been hit earlier by Russian artillery fire, and the company was not able to cross until the afternoon. After crossing the river, the tanks pushed, driving into the enemy's open flank, after clearing the Russian anti-tank ditches. The Tigers were expected to carry the attack to the enemy in order to protect the 7th Panzer Division's flank. The 7th Panzer Division was deployed as part of Army Detachment Kempf on the southern flank of the operation, with the objective of cutting off the Russian salient in Kursk, destroying enemy forces inside, and shortening the front by approximately 200 kilometers. Knispel's first target was a T-34. The 88mm round easily penetrated the Russian tank's frontal armor and knocked out the enemy vehicle with a single shot. The tanks commanded by Rippel and Robel, called simply Max and Moritz, drove side by side. On the 4th day of the offensive, Kurt Knispel destroyed 7 enemy tanks. He fired from on the move, as well as from great distances, but the result was the same each time: another enemy tank destroyed. On one occasion, they passed a group of 14 Russian tanks heading in the opposite direction. Knispel's tank immediately gave chase. Knispel knocked out one tank after another from behind, as the others watched. When 3 T-34s turned around, they were knocked out by Robel's Panzer, which was covering Rippel's Tiger. Every day offered new surprises and victories for Rippel and his crew, whether they were attacking or merely advancing. Knispel was the undisputed king of gunners, in quick drives through enemy-held villages, where enemy tanks and anti-tank weapons lurked behind buildings and hedges. It was an unforgettable experience, not just for the Rippel's crew, but also for Knispel, who was simply unbeatable with this gun. They too were hit, and the crew had to get out and take cover from Russian forces on several occasions. But each time, they got back into their tank and drove on. The final day of the attack saw even more fierce fighting. At first light, the panzers marched out. After several kilometers, they came upon an anti-tank gun position, which they promptly destroyed. Knispel noticed a gathering of tanks, to the right behind bushes and trees, as they pushed forward. Rippel's driver had already turned the Tiger, and the loader was ready with the next armor-piercing round, and another in the rack. The first enemy tank emerged from cover, exposing its flank. Knispel took a second to ascertain its identity before calling a halt. Knispel adjusted his aim as the vehicle came to a halt, then the cannon roared. The turret of the T-34 was blown off. "It's a direct hit," Ripple shouted to his men. Knispel and his loader, on the other hand, were already preparing to fire again. 2 more shots, and 2 more Russian tanks lay knocked out behind the saplings, having dared to slip past the Tigers. Knispel knocked out 2 more T-34s, and Ripple's Tiger added 2 more. The last T-34 turned on its heels, and raced towards the rear. Knispel fired a shot from more than 2,000 meters away as it fled. The shell hit the target, and the Russian tank burst into flames. On this day, Ripple and Knispel, like a heart and a soul in a tank, fired from every position. They rescued German tanks from perilous situations, rescued stranded personnel under fire, and proved themselves capable of dealing with any situation. When the adjacent division retreated, an avalanche of Russian tanks flooded into the resulting gap. Graf Kageneck had only 8 Tigers when he received the call to close another hole. The tanks Max and Moritz were among them. The Tigers pushed quickly at first, through a swampy area. A pleasant, alder-covered hill stretched beyond it. The tanks rolled to the top, and they all witnessed the troops retreat. Russian tanks drove through their midst, firing wildly to all sides, and just ran down entire squads of infantry. The 2 tanks of the 1st platoon were the first to fire. The Tigers' long-range guns knocked out the T-34s as they approached firing position. Knispel destroyed 3 T-34s. The 8 German tanks destroyed a total of 20 T-34 tanks, thus eliminating the Soviet tank unit. The battalion's last 10 serviceable Tigers arrived on the Baik-Orod-Kursk main road on July 14th. It was there that the main assault had begun 10 days earlier. Now they were back in the same spot. Without orders, the Tigers continually drove back into the steppe to free other German forces, who were still lagging behind. Kurt Knispel was always available. The battle became a bitter struggle in which the Red Army finally won the upper hand, when Hitler called off the offensive, because of the Allied landings in Sicily. The last German offensive had failed. It turned out that the Red Army was also planning an offensive, and that the Germans, numerous delays and postponements, had allowed the Soviets the opportunity to strengthen up their positions and bring in enormous reserves, which finally turned the tide. The Tiger had proved itself in every role assigned to it, but there were too few of them. Ripple and his crew had destroyed 27 enemy tanks in 12 days of action during the offensive at Kursk. Obergefreiter Knispel had been his gunner for all of these kills. He received the Iron Cross, First Class, and was immediately promoted to Unteroffizier. Kursk had made Kurt Knispel's name a byword for the battalion and the entire 3rd Panzer Corps. If you have enjoyed the video, please subscribe and support the channel for more. Many thanks for watching.